Welcome to our lecture tonight, Wall Street, the Great Jobs Killer, with Dr. William Black. All right. My name is Hannah Hayes. I'm a UMKC junior majoring in communication studies and the youthful face of Jobs Now that is the primary organizer for tonight's event. So the Jobs Now Coalition, you might not have heard of us yet, but you will soon. We're a Kansas City-based group of individuals and organizations that have united in the belief that the most pressing economic problem that faces us nationally and internationally is the prolonged job-robbing recession. We believe that this recession can only be rectified by a massive job creation policy oriented to rebuilding America's social and physical infrastructure and restoring private sector confidence in the economy.
I'm going to bring you a vision of what it looks like to the 1%. And I'm not going to put words in their mouths. I'm going to quote their words in context extensively to show you what they think about us. This is the view from the 1% in what should be one of the most infamous memoranda in the world, a Citigroup 2005 document. Now, this went to their private wealth group, the private banking group. And to get private banking, basically you have to have an income or wealth of $1 million. Right? So this is the elite of the elite that this goes through. And you have to envision the jolly tone of all this. In early September, we introduced the idea that the U.S. is a plutonomy, a concept that generated great interest from our clients. What's a plutonomy? A plutonomy is when you have rule by the wealthy and where the wealth of the nation is immensely, disproportionately goes to a very small group. Citigroup's wealthy clients were thrilled to hear that the U.S. was ascending to this exalted state. This is where their definition of a plutonomy, where economic growth is powered by and largely consumed by the wealthy few. So they send this message out to their wealthiest clients who respond with great interest to this idea. Now, note that small idea that the economic growth is supposedly powered by the wealthy few. So you already have this great lie that I said that starts everything, the great lie that they are somehow a unique productive class. The top 1% of households in the U.S., about 1 million households, accounted for about 20% of overall U.S. income in 2000. By the way, since that time, this has gone up considerably. Slightly smaller than the share of the income of the bottom of 60% of households put together. So that top 1% back in 2000, equivalent roughly to the bottom 60%. In terms of income. And again, this is much worse since then. That's about 1 million households compared with 60 million households, both with similar slices of the income pie. Notice the exclamation point. Clearly, in the analysis of the top 1% of U.S. households is paramount. We don't even have to analyze you folks anymore. You don't count. Only the 1% count. And once you get to wealth, which is far more unequal than income, this is the disparity. The top 1% of households also account for 33% of net worth, greater than the bottom 90% of households put together. The top 1%, and this is worse since these statistics were computed, more than the bottom 90%. It gets better. You see that phrase? It gets better. Or worse, depending on your political stripe. So tell me, what political stripe delights in the 1% having everything? Exactly so. All right, so they are delighted. It gets better, right? Remember the current campaign about it gets better? They have their own campaign about it gets better. We'll get even wealthier. Okay, the top 1% of households account for 40% of financial net worth, more than the bottom 95% of households put together. So that stock market stuff, that almost exclusively went to the top 1%. But it really didn't go to the top 1%. As Citigroup analysts helpfully tell us, it really went to the 1/10 of the 1%. Citi then warns that focusing on the top 1% masks the fact that their share of the pie is, quote, almost entirely driven by the fortunes of the top 1/10 of 1%, roughly 100,000 households. Citi goes on to praise the changes in taxes and the changes in senior executive compensation that have driven the tremendous increase in the share of the pie taken by these 100,000. And it coins a phrase. Okay, so one of our family rules is you can never compete with unintentional self-parody, right? If we had written this stuff, people would have said this is absurd, class bashing, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. No, they really do think this way. When they're writing and talking to themselves, this is how they really talk about us, right? So they have a wonderful phrase that they minted, the managerial aristocracy. Remember, they're writing this to the managerial aristocracy, which obviously has no sense of humor, right? And no sense, absolutely no sense of morality or any of that stuff in any of the major religions about difficulty in getting into heaven, right? So while in the early 20th century, capital income was the big chunk for the top 1/10 of 1% of households, the resurgence in their fortunes since the mid-'80s was mainly from, now what if we wrote this phrase? Oversized salaries, right? This is how they think about it themselves, as oversized salaries. The rich in the U.S. went from coupon clipping, dividend receiving rentiers to a managerial aristocracy. And note the next word, indulged by their shareholders. You know, you don't even have to go to the Catholic Church in the old days to buy an indulgence. This is really quite wonderful. So it's a managerial aristocracy. Modern executive compensation has produced not just the 1%, but the 1/10 of 1%. This is the C-suite is taking virtually all of the gains in wealth, even from the people lower down in the food chain. Remember that Bastiat warned that a moral code would arise glorifying the plunder. Cue Citigroup. Society and governments need to be amenable to disproportionately allow/encourage the few to retain that fatter profit share. The managerial aristocracy, like in the Gilded Age, the Roaring '20s and the thriving '90s, needs, this is like when your 12-year-old daughter comes and tells you she needs to commandeer a vast chunk of that rising profit share, either through capital income or simply paying itself a lot. Right? It needs to commandeer this. Commandeer is a word you use when you seize something you're not entitled to, right? And what they need, therefore, is a philosophy to be brooded about by those schlubs in the media and such who are stooges for the 1% that says, oh yeah, okay, good. Outsized income, vast chunk, by simply paying yourself a lot, sounds good to us. All right? And what's the great excuse for this that Citigroup offers? Oh, well, these are brave entrepreneurs taking risk. unlike the rest of us who don't have any risks in our lives, the CEOs are that turns out to be the people who are most at risk in America. And how many people think that has any existence in any plane of reality known to... Okay, so we think that despite the post-bubble, now the bubble they're talking about is an earlier bubble. This is the high-tech bubble, right, of 1990s such. We think that despite the post-bubble angst among celebrity CEOs, now if we call them celebrity CEOs, oh, that would be class warfare. What do they call them internally? Oh, yeah, they're celebrity CEOs. The trend of cost-cutting, balance sheet improving CEOs might just give way to risk-seeking CEOs, re-leveraging, going for growth, and expecting disproportionate compensation for it. Okay, this is written in 2005 when they are causing, through their frauds, the housing bubble to hyperinflate. Now, what did they do? Massively increase risk, re-leverage, that means have lots and lots of debt, and grow really rapidly, and then looted the place through compensation through disproportionate compensation. This is the roadmap that Citi laid down, and it's exactly what they did if you just add one little word, the F word. This is the F word you can use in polite society. It's second in economics where there's a tribal taboo against it. It's called fraud. Right? And this, too, should be in quotation marks. This is a direct quotation from the same memorandum. They're ode to inequality. We project that the plutonomies will likely see even more income inequality. By the way, they were right again. Disproportionately feeding off a further rise in the profit share in their economies. Capitalist-friendly governments, more technology-driven productivity, and globalization. Because globalization in this context means we send the jobs abroad to cut costs and increase that capital profit share and such. All right? Now, you can't make this up. They do this so much better than if we did it as tried to do it. They then go to this line, and this, if you're following it, this is the Atlas Shrugged, Ayn Rand-ish type nonsense. That they descend or ascend to poetry, which is hard for bankers. The earth is being held up by the muscular arms of its entrepreneur plutocrats, like it or not. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this, but we bailed them out. And we bailed them out to the tune of trillions of dollars. So if they were supposedly holding the earth, they kind of dropped the ball type of thing. But of course, they were never holding the earth. They were never creating the profits. It's the people in this room who are creating the profits. Many through a lifetime, many are on the journey as students and such.